Good morning and hello from Cannes. Apologies, I can't be there in person with you, but very excited and pleased to have this opportunity to talk with you. What I'd like to share with you today is our view on inclusive conscious advertising. First of all, I want to frame this as something that has a business imperative as well as a social responsibility imperative. What I'd like to share first is a comment by Mark Pritchard of CMO, who says half of all his brand growth on his brands for the last few years has come from reaching new inclusive audiences. So that's pointing out that the way we change what we do in advertising is not only right for our communities and diverse groups, but it's actually also good for business. So with that, let me just frame how we're approaching it and introduce you to Channel Factory's Conscious Advertising program. So the challenge we have at the moment is that we have a world where we need to combine being responsibly safe with being inclusive and effective. In the pursuit of being responsibly safe, I think we actually went a little too far and we actually created this era of exclusion. Any content in doubt, any creators in doubt was excluded from the advertising marketplace. And that has big consequences commercially and socially. What we want to do is be able to pivot to the era of inclusion, where we actually know, understand, and embrace all the voices that make up our communities and give them all the opportunity to engage with our brands. So how did we get to this era of exclusion? Well, we'll remember those years of digital chaos. What we had was the expansion of the digital media companies, and we had the expansion of the social media and the build of these sort of giant media companies. So we had video everywhere, so we had ads everywhere. But with ads everywhere, we also had a lack of control. So in this period of chaos, you ended up with fraud, you had PII and privacy issues, you had adjacency problems, and gosh, you just wanted to make sure your brand was never put next to inappropriate content or fraudulent content or bot traffic or anything else that wouldn't be good for the brand. So as a result of this period of chaos, we as an industry moved to a period of cautious. And in this period of being cautious, what we did is we created regulations and controls, and we started creating exclusion lists, and we started sort of excluding certain pieces of content and certain creators. And in many cases, we even excluded whole formats such as news because we didn't want to take the risk of an ad being next to inappropriate or harmful content. The problem with this is there were some unintended consequences despite our best efforts. Our best efforts were to keep brands safe, but the way we did it and the focus, for example, on keywords and controlling how we would exclude content meant that what we actually did is we started to overblock and we started to limit inclusion. We underfunded news, and we really didn't do anything to counter the balance of algorithms supporting inflationary content and as opposed to algorithms supporting positive enhancing content. So overblocking, over-exclusion, lack of funding were really the unintended consequences of this period of cautious. So for us to change that and get to this sort of better place, both for the brands and for the communities we represent, it's important that we go from chaos to cautious, but to conscious. And what I'm going to talk about in being conscious is when we start to move this next phase where we actually start to understand not only what's happening inside the machines and the decision-making criteria within our industry and think about brand safety and brand suitability and the methodologies, but we actually start to also think about what's happening in our own hearts and minds. And so we have to be aware by being conscious of our own conscious and unconscious bias, but we also have to be conscious about all the factors out there when we're scoring or categorizing content. Just doing it by one dimension, such as keywords, is not sufficient. We've got to understand the category. And in my mind, love the IAB 3.0 taxonomy and the way that's phrased. So let's understand the category. Let's understand the semantics, the meaning of the sentence. Let's understand imagery, as well as let's understand what the words are. And by doing that, we can categorize content in a much more informed way. So for us, being conscious is being aware of our own unconscious bias, being more conscious of all the factors of a video, and we make a difference and we are conscious when we start to be able to change the landscape. For us, what that'll mean is changing methodologies and the way we engage with clients in evolving to be more inclusive. And being conscious really matters because now we know there's built-in discrimination into the industry system. If we don't do something about it, we're actually condoning the era of exclusion. Now we know what it is, we can engage and we can actually address the downsides and these unintended consequences. And collectively, we can move to a better era of inclusion. So with that, we at Channel Factory are improving and changing the way we evolve, the way we engage with content. We're moving away from just thinking about how do you exclude harmful content or inappropriate, but how do we categorize all the content that's out there in social media so we can lean in and be inclusive and be intentional about engaging with the right content, the right creators, and the right communities that best suit the brands. So this evolution is taking us on a journey. The journey should never be finished because we should always try to be better. But this journey at the moment, we've started with 3 pillars. The first pillar of the conscious advertising program is DE&I. I'm picking this pillar because, frankly, race, ethnicity, gender, and disability related topics have been very harshly treated by the best intentions of brand safety. Many of the words that are actually in people's exclusion lists relate specifically to those groups that are in D&I. So we need to look at it through fresh eyes and understand how those words need to be more appropriate and what categories, frankly, should be part of brand safety and suitability. The second pillar is sustainability. And this is from environment, sea level, access to clean water, access to food, and also important things like carbon neutrality and how do we move to sustainability within media and advertising as well as the broader industry. So pillar 2, sustainability. Pillar 3 is civic society. And this is when we want to focus on the issues of democracy, human rights, women's rights, responsible journalism, and the access to free and fair information. Probably the next pillar after that will be health and wellness, with a very special focus on not only the physical illness issues, for example, we've experienced through the COVID pandemic, but also really focusing on mental health and mental wellness. So we build a range of pillars, we categorize content, and we create opportunities for people to lean in and intentionally engage with creators, communities, and audiences that positively align with those images. So today, to bring this to life for agencies and for advertisers, we actually have a suite of products within the conscious advertising program. And this product, at the moment, this product suite has 6 main solutions. The first one is conscious inclusion lists. So for example, if somebody says, I want to specifically reach in and intentionally support the LGBTQ community, then we can build an inclusion list at scale for those audiences for them to activate. If somebody says, well, actually, I have my general market, but I want to upweight a certain community to make sure they're represented, and whether that's an ethnicity upweight, and whether that's a sustainability upweight, whether that's a sexual orientation and sexual preference upweight, then what you would do is you would then add a component of every plan that would start to use more of these specific targeted lists to add to your 20,000 rows on a YouTube buy. The third area that you would get into is saying, well, I've actually identified some communities and some creators that are really performing well when I've been running advertising with them. And I think it's time now that we actually sponsor them. So you'd probably move into this conscious sponsorship program where you'd say these creators brought to you by brand X and start to associate your brand with those key causes and issues. The next level from that is you start to realize which of those creators are very aligned and articulate, and you'd get to the point of probably creating conscious content, and you'd have custom content being developed directly with a collection of creators that are most aligned with your brand to bring your brand authentically to their consumers. So the first 2 advertising buys, the next 2 are content creation and integration opportunities, and the last 2, what I would talk about here would be in the evolution, certainly in markets like the US, where we're approaching the presidential elections of 2024, how we can actually support political advertising, but with a conscious filter. And what I mean by that is making sure that we allow the voice to be heard of each community that should have their representation within the political process. But that filter means we still have to make sure that content is appropriate for airing, is inclusive, and is relevant to audience. So conscious political advertising. And finally, for many of the agencies now and the understanding of minority media credits, we are an MSNDC certified minority media company. And so if people have their requirement to meet a threshold of expenditure with minority companies, then anything that comes through Channel Factory qualifies as a minority media credit. So a range of products, there will be more, but today there are 6. And this really is our way of starting to find ways to help solve that problem that Mark Pritchard says we need to deliver media that is actually in its impression delivery equivalent to the audience we want to reach. And not a token X%, but really understanding how we authentically connect with diverse audiences to drive the brand growth that he's seen and experienced within P&G. So what we're doing, quite simply, we want to unblock the blocked, we want to include the excluded, and we want to create a far more inclusive and commercially effective media landscape so that brands can connect with their right audiences in authentic ways to truly support the connection and passion points of the brand and the relevance and things of meaning for their consumers. So that's conscious. And with that, I would invite us all to take a step forward and decide that we've had enough of this era of exclusion, and we're going to commit, sign up, shine a light, and join this journey, this mission to be more conscious in how we build out advertising. And with that, I would just invite us all to say, please, let's just be conscious. Thank you very much.